Welcome back, deep divers. Do you ever get the feeling that some knowledge, some books were almost, I don't know, meant to be lost?
Oh, absolutely. Like some doors are better left unopened, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like those rumors of texts hidden away in occult archives. Too potent, too transformative, maybe even dangerous?
Yeah, the kind of stuff that sends shivers down your spine just thinking about it.
Right. But beyond those, I think there's another category of lost knowledge. The stuff that just kind of faded away. Not because it was dangerous, but maybe because the way we see the world just shifted things.
Fascinating. And you're thinking of something specific here.
Well, today we're diving into one such realm, Spagyric alchemy. Not turning lead into gold, but the kind that was focused on healing. It's a way of looking at the human body and the world around us that's, well, pretty radically different from how we see things today.
So we're talking about an ancient system of medicine then.
Yeah, it's all about extracting the very essence of things, the most potent, purified forms for medicinal purposes.
And what's our guidebook for this journey into Spagyric alchemy?
Our primary source is a text called Spagyric Medicine by John Pharamund Rhumelius, 17th century German physician. But not just any physician.
Okay, there's more to this Rhumelius guy.
Oh yeah, he was a disciple of Paracelsus.
Paracelsus, the alchemist, the physician, well, some might say the mystic. His writings can be pretty dense, right? Like trying to unravel an ancient riddle.
That's where Rhumelius comes in. Think of him as a translator, distilling Paracelsus's ideas into something a little easier to grasp.
That's incredibly helpful. So for this deep dive, what's the plan? What are we hoping to unearth from Rhumelius's work?
We're going to break down the core principles of Spagyric medicine, where it came from, how it differed from other approaches at the time, and get this, how they actually made their medicines.
I'm already intrigued. Sounds very different from just popping a pill.
Totally. It's a whole different way of thinking about health and healing, a forgotten science, built on a very different view of the world and our place in it. So let's jump into it, shall we? Right from the start, Rhumelius makes this really striking statement. He says, the true medicine of our forefathers consists solely in the quintessence. And he credits the discovery of this quintessence to, wait for it, Hermes Trismegistos.
Now that's a name that echoes through the halls of esoteric history. Hermes Trismegistos, the thrice great, the supposed author of the Hermetic texts steeped in ancient wisdom and alchemy.
Exactly. And there's this sense right away that Rhumelius is talking about a form of medicine that's been lost. Right? He's lamenting a decline from some pristine, powerful healing art of the past.
It's a powerful image. And he goes on to talk about misochemistry, right? A corrupted version of the original art, muddled with what he calls magic and less pure forms of chemistry. It's as if the true recipe got, well, messed with over time.
Right. Like someone took this pure ancient knowledge and just started throwing in random ingredients. And get this, he even suggests some pretty dramatic reasons for why this knowledge might have been lost.
Oh. Do tell.
Well, he hints that perhaps, and I'm quoting here, Satan, the enemy of mankind, deliberately tried to keep this healing knowledge from humanity.
Wow. So not just a decline, but a deliberate suppression of powerful healing knowledge. That definitely adds another layer to the mystery, doesn't it? It speaks to a time when knowledge was often viewed through a spiritual lens, a source of both power and potential danger.
Absolutely. But that begs the question, where did this true medicine, this knowledge of the quintessence actually come from, if not from, Satan?
Good question. And luckily, Rhumelius gives us an answer. He tells us that it originates, and I quote, in the center of the earth.
The center of the earth. That's quite a statement.
It is, and it gets even more intriguing. He goes on to emphasize the divine origin of this knowledge, saying it comes directly from God and is revealed through the Holy Trinity.
So right from the beginning, he's weaving together this intricate tapestry of divine revelation, the earth itself, and this lost, powerful healing art.
It's a foundation built on some pretty profound ideas. And this sets the stage for understanding one of the core concepts in Spagyric alchemy, the idea of the three principles of all things.
Mercury, sulfur, and salt, right?
Exactly. Now, it's important to note that we're not talking about these substances in their literal chemical sense as we understand them today.
So what are they talking about?
Think of them more as fundamental forces, qualities, or even archetypes that permeate everything in existence. They're the building blocks of all creation, found across the three kingdoms: vegetable, animal, and mineral.
Three kingdoms, so like plants, animals, and rocks.
Precisely. So in plants, Rhumelius says you find salt, oil, and water, which he equates to his philosophical salt, sulphur, and mercury. In minerals, these principles manifest more literally earth, sulfur, and mercury, but again, understood in an alchemical sense, not just as the raw elements. And in animals, it corresponds to body, soul, and spirit.
Okay, so it's like they're looking for a common thread, a unifying principle
Yeah.
that connects all of creation, right?
Exactly. It's a way of seeing the interconnectedness of everything in the universe.
And how does this tie back into their approach to medicine?
Well, this is where that famous Hermetic principle comes in, like, is healed by its like. It's the idea that to truly heal, you need to address imbalances with substances that resonate with the affected part on a deeper level. So if a particular organ is out of balance, you would look for a remedy that shares its essential nature, its signature, so to speak.
So instead of just treating symptoms, they're looking for the root cause of the imbalance.
Exactly. And this is where they really differed from the dominant medical thinking at the time, which was the Galenic system.
Remind me, what was Galenic medicine all about?
Galenic medicine focused on balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. They often treated illnesses with their opposites, kind of like a counterbalance. Too much heat, apply something cold; too much dryness, use something moist.
So kind of like a seesaw, trying to keep everything level.
Yeah, a good analogy. But the Spagyrists, with their emphasis on the three principles, believed that the key to health lay in restoring the harmonious interplay of these fundamental forces within the individual.
Okay, I'm starting to get the picture. So we've got the quintessence as the ultimate medicine, sourced from the earth and revealed by God. We've got the three principles as the fundamental building blocks of everything. But how do they actually understand illness itself? I mean, this was centuries before germ theory. What did they think was making people sick?
Right. Well, this is where things get really interesting. Rhumelius lays out 5 origins of all illnesses. And honestly, it's a pretty comprehensive list, even by today's standards.
5. Lay 'em on me.
So first up, there's the divine origin, illness as a direct result of God's wrath, punishment for sin, that sort of thing.
So divine retribution, basically.
Yeah. Second, you got the astral origin. Here, disease is attributed to the influence of the planets and stars.
Astrology playing a role in health. That's pretty far out there, even for me.
It was a common belief back then. Third is the poisonous origin. This one's a bit more straightforward. It relates to impurities in food and drink, including a substance they call tartar, basically mineral deposits that build up in the body.
Okay, so bad food, bad water. That makes sense. What are the last two?
The fourth is the spiritual origin. This category includes things like witchcraft, curses, or the negative influence of human spirits.
Like a spiritual attack, essentially.
Precisely. And finally, we have the natural origin. This one involves imbalances in the three principles: constitutional weaknesses people are born with, or excesses in diet and lifestyle.
So kind of like our modern understanding of genetics and lifestyle choices contributing to health problems.
In a way, yes. But it's all seen through the lens of these three principles. So diagnosing someone in the 17th century was less about identifying specific symptoms and more about determining the origin of the illness, which would then guide the treatment.
That's a very different approach than just treating the symptoms, isn't it?
Absolutely. And this brings us to the next key concept, the real cure, as Rhumelius puts it.
Okay, so once they figured out the cause, how did they go about actually healing someone?
Well, remember that core principle of must always help, Rhumelius takes that a step further and says that because man is a microcosm of the macrocosm, healing must come from forces that are also aligned with that larger cosmic order.
Okay, back up a sec. What do they mean by man as microcosm?
It's the idea that the human being is a miniature reflection of the entire universe, containing within it all the elements and forces that exist in the greater world. So to heal the little world of man, you need to draw upon the powers of the great world, the cosmos. And the key to unlocking this healing power, you guessed it, the fifth essence or quintessence derived from those same three principles and the 4 elements we talked about earlier.
The quintessence keeps popping up. So we're talking about the most potent, purified essence of something, right? Like, imagine you're reducing a sauce down to its most concentrated flavor. That's the quintessence.
Perfect analogy. Rhumelius gives some really vivid examples. The quintessence of gold for the heart, silver for the brain, copper for the kidneys, and so on. He believed that each metal, each substance, had a unique energetic connection to specific parts of the body.
So it's like there's this cosmic pharmacy out there, and each element is like a key that unlocks healing in a specific part of the body.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. Remember those planetary signatures we touched on earlier?
The idea that things in nature kind of show you what they're good for.
Precisely. Rhumelius stresses the importance of recognizing those signatures not only in stones but also in plants and animals.
Yeah.
The idea being that their appearance or inherent qualities provide clues to their medicinal uses based on their corresponding planets.
Like a secret language written into the fabric of nature itself. And he specifically mentions that minerals, when prepared spagyrically, meaning with their impurities meticulously removed through alchemical processes, could be used to create incredibly powerful remedies, especially for chronic or severe illnesses.
Exactly. They viewed these spagyrically prepared medicines, these quintessences, as being almost intelligent. Like they could actively seek out and correct imbalances in the body based on their inherent signature, a bit like a lock and key system at a subtle energetic level.
Okay, so we're getting a good sense of how they understood illness and this concept of healing with quintessences and signatures. But how did they actually go about making these powerful medicines, this spagyric art, as they called it? What did that actually involve?
It's a bit more involved than just brewing a cup of tea, that's for sure. The central idea of spagyric preparation was to separate the pure from the impure, the kernel from the shell, as Rhumelius puts it. They called this spagyric anatomy.
So they're basically breaking things down to their most basic components, right? To isolate the real medicinal goodness.
That's the idea. And he mentions this mysterious universal menstruum, sometimes referred to as the water of the wise. It's described as a super solvent, capable of dissolving anything.
It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
It definitely has that mythical quality. And Rhumelius himself says he's not permitted to reveal anything more about it. So, shrouded in secrecy. He does, however, talk about more specific preparations involving the substance's own spirit and radical moisture. This typically involved a whole series of alchemical processes: digestion, calcination, sublimation, coagulation, fixation.
Oh, slow down a bit. What are all those fancy words?
Okay, so digestion basically means gentle heating over time. Calcination involves reducing a substance to ash, but think of it as more than just burning something. They believe this process released hidden properties. Sublimation is about purifying a substance by heating it and collecting the vapor that rises. Coagulation is basically the solidifying of a purified essence, and fixation is the process of making a volatile substance stable.
Okay, I see. So each step in the process is carefully designed to refine and purify the substance, to ultimately isolate those three principles at their purest form.
Exactly. And this was seen as very different from simply using, say, purgative medicines.
What are those?
Purgatives were basically strong laxatives designed to cleanse the body quickly. But Rhumelius argues that those just rush through the system without really addressing the underlying imbalance. Spagyrically prepared medicines, on the other hand, were believed to act at a much deeper level, targeting the very root of the illness.
Fascinating. So it's not just about what you use, but how you prepare it. And this brings us to another key aspect: timing. Rhumelius dedicates a whole chapter to the propitious moment for picking the medicinal species. What's the significance of that?
Well, they believed that everything in nature, whether it's a plant, an animal, or even a mineral, has a specific time when its balsamic influence is at its peak. Kind of like how a fruit is best when it's perfectly ripe.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So they weren't just wandering out into the fields and picking things willy-nilly. There was a science to it.
Absolutely. They meticulously tracked the seasons, the lunar cycles, even the positions of the planets to determine the optimal moment for harvesting each ingredient. Rhumelius gives specific examples, like wormwood picked at its balsamic exaltation being most effective for kidney stones, or chicory harvested in the fall being best for stopping hemorrhages. He even says that a medicine prepared from plants that weren't harvested at the right time is like a body without a soul. It's missing that vital essence.
So a physician had to be part botanist, part astronomer, and part alchemist, all rolled into one. And this emphasis on timing ties back into that idea of signatures, right?
It absolutely does. They saw the perfect time to harvest something as being written into its very nature, just like its medicinal uses.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The three principles, the quintessence, the origins of illness, the importance of signatures and timing. But there's one big concept we haven't touched on yet: the universal medicine. This is where things get really mystical, right?
It does, and it brings us to the concept of the Philosopher's Stone, often considered the ultimate goal of alchemy.
The elusive elixir of life.
Well, it's described in many ways, but essentially it's a substance said to hold the essence of all creation, the distilled quintessence of the entire world machine. It's said to have the power to rejuvenate, to restore balance to the little world of man by harmonizing it with the great world.
And it's described in some pretty cryptic terms. Rhumelius calls it a magic stone, concealed within the chaos of the microcosm. And the starting point for creating it, the raw material, is described as a round ball which contains the ocean.
Very poetic, isn't it? And quite mysterious.
It definitely leaves you with more questions than answers. What's a round ball that contains the ocean?
That's part of the enigma of alchemy. These texts often employ symbolic language that can be interpreted on many levels. It's left for the reader, the seeker, to decipher.
So while the Philosopher's Stone may be the ultimate goal, it sounds like there were other, more readily available remedies for everyday ailments.
Of course. Rhumelius talks about 3 magical stones: the animal stone, the plant stone, and the mineral stone. Each of these was believed to hold specific healing powers. He also discusses elixirs and tinctures tailored to individual organs, like a tincture of the sun for the heart and a tincture of the moon for the brain.
Tincture of the sun. That sounds pretty potent.
And he goes into detail about how to prepare potable gold, silver, and other metals, always emphasizing the importance of removing any impurities to make them safe and effective for healing.
So basically, alchemy meets medicine. And he also mentions the quintessence of pearls and the tincture of corals for specific uses. Pearls being good for the brain and heart, corals for strengthening the blood and vital spirit.
It's a very specific, targeted approach, but always grounded in that broader Hermetic philosophy. And then there's the tripartite philia.
Triwea.
The tripartite philia. It's another term for a panacea, a universal remedy. Rhumelius describes different types of philia depending on their origin. You've got the universal menstruum itself, the microcosm, which yields the animal stone, celestial dew, which yields the plant stone, and Adamic earth, which yields the mineral stone.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. But I have to ask, what about the preparation of the animal philia? It involves seawater collected under specific lunar conditions and, wait for it, the appearance of mythical creatures called Melusinus and pygmies.
Now that's where things get really interesting.
It's a mix of practical alchemy and something out of a fairy tale.
Well, remember what we said earlier about the symbolic language often used in alchemical texts? These descriptions may not be meant to be taken literally. They could represent specific stages in the process or even visionary experiences that the alchemists might have.
Okay, so maybe not literal mermaids and tiny people running around the lab.
Probably not. And then we come back to medical gold and that mysterious universal menstruum. Now, Rhumelius is very clear that true potable gold, the kind that has real medicinal properties, can't just be made by dissolving ordinary gold.
There's a difference.
Oh yeah, a big one. He talks about different forms of gold: astral gold, mineral gold, elementary gold, and he says that to extract the pure, life-enhancing essence of gold, you need that special universal menstruum, which he links back to the primordial waters of Genesis.
So not just any old water will do. This is a special alchemically prepared substance that can dissolve even metals without destroying their essence.
Exactly. It's about extracting the purest form without corrupting its inherent power. And finally, we circle back to the bird of Hermes and those fundamental alchemical principles: mercury, sulfur, and salt.
Those keep coming up. They really are the foundation of everything, aren't they?
Absolutely. Rhumelius describes philosophical mercury as a kind of coagulated air, or dry water, found in what he calls our sea. Philosophical sulfur is a purified fire essence, sometimes linked to the philosophical egg, another key alchemical concept. And philosophical salt is considered the root of the whole art, containing the hidden potential of both sulfur and mercury. He outlines how to prepare these, always emphasizing the importance of purifying and transforming them from their raw, natural forms.
It's amazing how much depth there is to these concepts. They're not just chemical elements. They represent fundamental forces in nature.
And these forces are seen as being active in both the macrocosm and the microcosm. Which brings us to another really interesting interpretation that Rhumelius offers. He sees the Song of Songs of Solomon as an allegory for the alchemical great work.
Wait, the Song of Songs? The biblical text?
Yeah. It was quite common for alchemists to see hidden meanings in religious and mythological texts. Rhumelius points to specific passages in the Song of Songs that he believes represent different stages of the alchemical process: putrefaction, sublimation, coagulation, fixation. He says the subject of this allegorical work contains both white and red, male and female, active and passive forces, and it's found everywhere but considered lowly. This is a clear reference to the prima materia, the fundamental substance that alchemists sought to transform.
So they're reading these ancient texts not just for their literal meaning, but for deeper symbolic representations of the alchemical process. And then finally, we come to the Hermetic herbal, which brings us back to the practical applications of all this. It's basically a guide to using plants for healing, right?
Exactly.
Right.
It's full of information about specific plants, their signatures, the illnesses they're traditionally used for, and most importantly, the precise times to harvest them for maximum potency. There are even instructions for gathering different types of plants based on their corresponding zodiac signs.
So wow, we've really journeyed through the heart of Spagyric medicine, haven't we? It's a system that combines ancient wisdom, alchemy, astrology, and a deep reverence for nature.
It's a very different way of looking at the world, a very holistic understanding of health and healing. And it's incredibly complex.
It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? In our modern worlds where we're so focused on isolating specific compounds and targeting precise biological mechanisms, have we lost something in the process? Something that this older, more holistic approach understood?
It's definitely food for thought. And if anyone out there is feeling particularly inspired, the writings of Paracelsus and his followers are a vast and fascinating landscape to explore.
Great suggestion. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds open, keep asking questions, and maybe take a closer look at the world around you. You never know what secrets you might uncover.